On Saturday, President Cyril Ramaphosa was one of 16 breeders showcasing their cattle at his Phala Phala Game Farm auction hosted by the Ankole Society of South Africa. The president also attended the event, which was closed to the media. Over 60 lots were auctioned off, with the most expensive bull selling for 1.65 million rand. The auction drew wide public interest due to the president's involvement in the unfolding controversy surrounding the theft of a foreign currency on his property. To weigh in on this developing story, we're joined by political analyst Xolani Dube. Xolani, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you so much for your time. It does seem there's been some mixed reaction to this high-end auction that took place on the president's Phala Phala farm. The oddity being the fact that it seems to be business as usual, even though there's so much controversy around that piece of property right now.
Look, we have to understand that the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, do have an agenda. The question that we have to ask ourselves, do the South African natives have an agenda, or are they making Cyril their agenda? Because if we have a holistic agenda, I don't think that the issue of Farmgate was going to be this issue as it is currently. The Farmgate, one can say, is just a smoke screen. We have to ask ourselves, what is beyond this Farmgate? What is really happening in South Africa? Because it seems as if we are chasing the mirage if we really go with this what you call it, the Farmgate saga. I don't think that really there is anything that we need to entertain there. The most important thing that we have to be dealing with right now is what you call it, the fourth socio-economic and political power transition. That is happening in South Africa currently. Because the issue of Farmgate, to be quite honest, you are just dealing with the ANC Palace Politics, where the Maria Antoinettes are bickering. You know, RET as well as the CR are the Mary Antoinette of our politics. These are the people who have been telling us to eat cakes for quite some time now. And so there is no difference between Cyril and Ace Mahashul. The most important thing, we as South African citizens, that we need to ask ourselves, what is our agenda? What do we want? Because it seems as if we don't have an agenda. We keep on chasing the palace politics of the ANC. Or not even politics, the bickering that is happening there in the ANC Palace Politics.
I think the issue that South Africans have, and possibly the reason why there is so much attention on these developments, is the fact that the president is simply not being transparent. Firstly, with regards to the actual incident that took place in 2020, why can go to the lengths of not reporting the crime? Those are some of the questions that South Africans are asking at this point. And whether or not, subsequent to that, his actions or inaction was in fact a breach of his executive code of ethics. These are important questions to have answered, hardly a mirage or an example of smoke and mirrors.
Look, we have to understand that in South Africa, people, they don't rule with the prescripts of moral and ethics. You know, we elected Cyril Ramaphosa knowing very well that he is a tainted person. You know, and even if you go back, remember about Jacob Zuma, and also remember what happened to Thabo Mbeki. There was an issue of arms deal and HIV and scandals, and Jacob Zuma came with Kandla Gate and the state capture or the Gupta issue, and Cyril, there was Marikana, and now we have this Farmgate. Look, the issue of scandals, you know, they don't stick. We need not to fool ourselves. These scandals won't stick. As long as these guys are performing a particular role for those who rule our country, they will be protected. At a particular time and space, they get disposed. We know very well that Cyril will be disposed at a particular time. The question is, when he's disposed, are we going to celebrate? What do we have, or what is the agenda that we have as the South African natives, or as the South African? Because you look, to be commentators of scandals, but without an agenda, I think, as I'm saying, is just being in a false paradise. And we are dealing with the politics of mirage here. The real politics that we have to ask ourselves, even if I can ask yourself, if we remove Cyril Ramaphosa, who's next? The question is, when you look at that ANC institution, there is no one who can stand above and say, I am moral and ethical leader. I can take South Africa to the next level. Because we know it very well. Let me tell you something. We have Cyril because of Ace, because of Didi, because of Zweli, because of Paul Mashadi. What was the agenda of these four people who brought us Cyril Ramaphosa? And who do they consult to bring Cyril Ramaphosa? And so, what makes Cyril Ramaphosa be different from them? The question is, they are not different. We have ready now to start a discourse that says, what is our agenda as South Africans? Because our agenda can't be commentating on scandals of our leaders.
Well, Xolani, some may argue that the agenda at play here is the fact that South Africans simply don't want to be led by corrupt individuals. And unfortunately, as we've learned with the Nkandla scandal, the only way to apply pressure on members of the executive to ensure that they are transparent and are actually held to account for these allegations is if media attention is on them, is if enough pressure is applied on the institutions who have been established and mandated to getting to the bottom of allegations such as this. So to argue that the national agenda is not at play here, I don't think that's a fair assessment of South Africans and why there's so much public interest in what's happening here. This is also an individual who started out his presidency, his tenure as president of this country, setting out to clean up a lot of the corruption that we see in government. And so, once again, it befalls on the South African people to apply pressure to ensure that he himself doesn't find himself mired in this exact same problem.
Look, that's why I'm saying, if we are going to make corruption as our national agenda, and we as natives, or we as South African people, we know it very well that we are powerless. The people who have good power are those who are ruling this country. You are using a good example about, say, South Africa. The question is, who was behind, say, South Africa? Why today we don't see an uproar when issues that are worse than Zuma's time in office are unfolding in our country? The question is, those who own the means of production, they always dictate the agenda and they set the narrative. Hence, I am saying we need to contest that. We need to have our own agenda that insulates from being used as the puppet by the ruling class. Because if really we as South Africans, we do have an agenda, I can assure you, Cyril was not even going to ascend to the highest office because we knew what type of a person he is. But because we are powerless, they impose Cyril on us. And Cyril now is strolling freely, and we are still powerless. The question is, tomorrow the reality is, Cyril tomorrow will be the president. And come the 18th of December, Cyril will be there contesting. On the 21st of December, there is a high possibility, if Cyril is still a useful fool of the ruling class, that he might close the ANC conference. Hence, I am saying, we as South Africans, we need to identify our agenda so that if we have an agenda, we can contest any leader that we think that is not deserving to lead us. Thereafter, the issue of corruption won't be our priority number one. Our priority number one will be the total emancipation of those who were historically dispossessed and oppressed.
All right, Xolani, thank you so much. We are going to leave it there. That was a political analyst, Xolani Dube, helping us to make sense of more developments coming out of the Farmgate scandal.